How did I get here? 1 minute I was saving lives. The next I was watching mine slip away. They say doctors don't fear blood, but this wasn't blood I could fix. It was hunger. It was darkness. And once it got in, I couldn't cut it out. Before the gurney slammed through the ER doors, rattling against the metal frame as 2 nurses wrestled it toward Trauma Bay 3. Blood poured from the man's neck, a deep, jagged tear like something had taken a chunk out of him. His skin was pale, lips drained of color, and his eyes, wide, glassy, unfocused, tracked the fluorescent lights above. Dr. Elaina Ward rushed to meet them, stethoscope bouncing against her chest as she snapped on a fresh pair of gloves. She had seen gunshot wounds, stabbings, and car crash victims broken beyond recognition. But this was different. The smell hit her before the reality did. Not just blood. It was rancid, heavy with the scent of decay, like raw meat left to spoil in the summer heat. It clung to the air and burned her throat. "Vitals crashing," one of the nurses called out, pushing the gurney into position. "Get me a crash cart," Dr. Ward barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. Her hands moved automatically, clamping the wound, applying pressure, suctioning blood from the airway. But a small, unwelcome thought kept echoing in the back of her mind. This isn't going to help. The patient convulsed. At first it looked like a seizure, the violent tremors rocking his limbs against the restraints. Then his eyes locked on Dr. Ward and the movement changed. It wasn't random, it was intent. He lunged. The bite was so fast she barely registered it. Teeth clamped down on her forearm through the latex glove, tearing flesh with a wet rip. A white-hot pain shot up her arm. She shouted, jerking back. But the man's jaw held like a steel trap. 2 nurses grabbed his shoulders, struggling to pry him away. His teeth tore free with a sickening pull, and a ragged flap of skin came with them. Blood poured down her wrist, dripping onto the tile in uneven splatters. Elaina staggered back, clutching her arm, the pounding in her ears drowning out the rest of the room. The patient thrashed wildly, snapping at the air, eyes glazed with something far beyond delirium. "Sedate him!" she heard someone yell, but the words felt distant. The edges of her vision blurred. The adrenaline kept her moving. Gauze, pressure, keep it clean. But deep down, she knew. She had read the reports coming from the other hospitals. She had heard the whispers among the staff. This wasn't just another infectious disease. And now it was inside her. Outside, the muffled sound of sirens and screaming bled through the walls of the hospital. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the monitors beeped steadily, counting down the last moments of Dr. Elaina Ward's life as herself. During the first signs, they kept her in an isolation room at the far end of the ER. The glass wall separated her from the rest of the staff, but it wasn't the barrier she feared. It was the ticking inside her own body. Dr. Elaina Ward sat on the hospital bed, her bitten arm wrapped in thick gauze. It throbbed relentlessly, each pulse of pain syncing with her heartbeat. Sweat gathered on her brow, soaking the collar of her scrubs. Her breathing was shallow, but it wasn't exhaustion. It was hunger. Not the kind she'd ever known. This was deeper, heavier, like her stomach had been replaced with a black hole that wanted to drag something warm and living into it. Outside the glass, a young nurse avoided her eyes. He checked the monitors and scribbled something on a chart before slipping away. Even in the haze beginning to cloud her mind, Elaina could tell. They were afraid of her. And maybe they should be. The bite site burned now, spreading a numbness up her arm and into her shoulder. Her fingertips twitched involuntarily. She stared at them like they belonged to someone else. The smells in the ER were changing. She no longer noticed the antiseptic or the bleach. Instead, her senses locked onto the scent of blood from somewhere down the hall. She could pick out individual heartbeats in the chaos, rapid, terrified rhythms calling to her like a drum. The voices outside the room blurred, turning into an unintelligible murmur. The glass in front of her seemed thinner, her reflection warped. Paler skin, sunken cheeks, and eyes ringed in shadow. She leaned forward, pressing a trembling hand against the glass. Her nails scraped softly against it, and the sound made her mouth water. She didn't remember standing. She didn't remember crossing the room. But now she was pressed against the glass, teeth bared without realizing it. And somewhere behind her, the heart monitor let out a slow, steady beep. 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 That didn't belong to a living person anymore. During fully turned. When the blackout hit the hospital, everything shifted. The emergency generators kicked in, casting the halls in a dim, flickering red glow. Somewhere down the corridor, a crash echoed, metal against tile, followed by screaming. That was when the glass door to Elena's isolation room slid open. No one ever figured out who made the mistake. Maybe it was panic. Maybe someone thought they could save her. But once the barrier was gone, the last thread of restraint in her body snapped. She moved faster than she ever had in life. The world sharpened into prey and pathways. Every heartbeat in the ER called to her, but one was closer. A man crouched over a supply cart, trying to reload a syringe with trembling hands. She was on him in an instant. Her teeth tore through flesh like paper, hot blood spilling into her mouth. The taste flooded her senses. Metallic, electric, alive. In the deep rot of her brain, something screamed at her to stop, but the hunger roared louder. Every bite dulled the echo of her old self, until there was almost nothing left. The nurses scattered. One slammed into the wall in her rush to escape, clutching her own bleeding arm. Elaina turned toward her without thinking, following the scent, the fear. She lunged, boots squealing against the tile, hands grasping for warm skin. Bodies fell around her, some fleeing, some dragged down. The ER floor, once sterile, became a canvas of footprints and blood. Her former colleagues, people she'd laughed with in break rooms, traded shifts with, celebrated birthdays with, now looked like nothing more than walking veins. Somewhere in the chaos, the hospital's PA system crackled and died. The last words she would ever hear as herself had been shouted in panic minutes before. "Bite victim loose in trauma bay." But now those words were meaningless. The only language she understood was the rush of blood in arteries, the scent of fear, and the endless pull of the next meal. After, death and release. It ended in the same trauma bay where it began. The red emergency lights had long since burned out, leaving the hospital in pale moonlight streaming through shattered windows. The ER was silent, except for the distant moan of the wind and the faint rustle of bodies moving somewhere deeper inside. Dr. Elaina Ward, or what was left of her, wandered among overturned gurneys and broken glass. Her white coat, once pristine, hung in tatters, stiff with dried blood. Her eyes no longer tracked with the precision of a physician, but they still lingered on the faces of the fallen, as if some remnant of recognition remained. She didn't notice the man until he was only a few steps away. He was young, armor-clad, a fire axe gripped in white-knuckled hands. His breathing was steady, too steady for prey. This one wasn't running. He had come for her. Elena's head tilted, a slow, jerky motion. Somewhere in the fog, something stirred, a memory of standing at this very gurney calling for a crash cart. The smell of antiseptic thick in the air. For a heartbeat, she wasn't a monster. She was a doctor again. The axe swung, steel split skull, and the world blinked out. The hunger, the unrelenting pull toward warm flesh, the nightmare of moving without control, all of it dissolved into nothing. In that void, Elaina Ward opened her eyes. She stood in the ER as it had been before the outbreak. The walls were clean. The air smelled faintly of coffee from the break room, and the monitors hummed softly. Her arm was whole again. Her colleagues stood around her, smiling, alive. Relief swelled in her chest. She wasn't trapped anymore. Then the light took her, and the doctor who couldn't save herself finally walked away from the hospital, leaving only silence behind. And just like that, it was over. The hunger, the noise, the nightmare, all gone, replaced by something I thought I'd never feel again. Peace. I guess even monsters can be saved. Just not the way they want. This is Whispers Between Worlds. We upload horror daily. You'll see me again, maybe sooner than you think.